Hello, and welcome to Come Play With Us, a spooky storytelling podcast. My name is Leela, and I'm joined by my evil twin,
Ruby. We're actually both the evil twin. We're both writers with non-writer day jobs. We believe in the power of great storytelling, so we've invited guests with the challenge of weaving a tale about real-life hauntings and paranormal activities with the sole purpose of scaring the shit out of us.
We'll rate them to see how they've done. Our ratings go a little something like this: scared shitless, some chills, and I think I'll be able to sleep tonight. Welcome back, everyone. We have here for you a new episode. And in this episode, Ruby is going to try and scare our adopted nephew, who we adopted as a nephew, not adopted into our family, maybe, Christian.
I'm not going to rule it out. Hi,
Yeah.
Christian.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay.
Well, Christian is a good nephew, adopted nephew, because Christian has lowered the lights, which pleases me greatly because I like when the lights are all off.
Yeah.
My lights are not off because I'm telling the story, but also I don't want to get creeped out. But we'll see what happens.
And my lights are partially dim as well.
Yeah. Well, Christian, this might end up being a little bit more of an interactive tale because this involves Dila and Rama. This is a story I want to tell you about our visit and the historical hauntings of the Merchant House in New York City. The Merchant House is known as one of the most haunted houses in the country. It actually almost happens to be in my backyard. It's very close to me. It's like walking distance. The area it is in is considered NoHo, north of Houston. But because it is nearby and because we love hauntings, we took Rama there with us one year. She came out for Thanksgiving. I think this was in 2022. And we went, all three of us together, on a cold and lonely Black Friday when the city had emptied out. It was quiet and depleted. And when we got to the Merchant House, because it's a weird day, Black Friday, you're not going to see tourists, and New Yorkers often are out of town. We really, for the most part, seem to be the only three people in that house. I say house, but it's, you'll see in New York City, one of those, they're called row houses. They're very thin, but they have multiple floors. So almost like, if you can imagine, like a townhouse. So it was just mostly us and then the employees of the Merchant House. Naturally, this deserted atmosphere inspired the spirits to come out and maybe observe us, and perhaps they even communed with us, but you'll find out. So let me just start with the history of the old mansion. The Merchant House, as I mentioned, it's a row house. It's made of brick and marble, built in 1832. And this area that it's in Manhattan used to be a very nice, pleasant suburb in New York City back before it was a city. New York City basically started at the most southern end of Manhattan, around which is what is now Fulton Street. And then you can imagine Times Square, which is further north, was considered upstate. Everyone got around with horse and carriage. Seabury Treadwell, who was a wealthy merchant, he bought the house in 1835, and he lived there together with his wife, Eliza, his 8 children, and 4 Irish servants, most of whom were women. This family ended up living in this house for almost a century, but some believe that they are still in this house today. Only 3 of the Treadwell children ended up actually marrying and moving out. The rest of the children, for one reason or another, stayed single and stayed in that house. So the area around that stopped becoming the suburbs as the city started to grow northward. So then it became a part of the actual New York City. The wealthy Manhattanites just kept moving north and building more houses. But it appears that the Treadwell family could not afford to do that. So they ended up staying, and the area changed around this house. Eventually, only 4 children remained alive. They were all sisters. Obviously, during that time, women did not traditionally work outside the home. So the only way that they were able to make any money was to sell off their land and part of their estate. Eventually, at the turn of the century in the early 1900s, only one sister was left alive. Her name was Gertrude Treadwell. Apparently, she had stayed single because her father had forbidden her from marrying a Roman Catholic. And so I think for this reason, she was a spinster and a recluse. She stayed mainly in her bedroom on the 2nd floor. She rarely left the home and rarely saw visitors. But she did keep the house in its original condition with most of the original furnishings from the mid-1800s. But she still had to figure out how to have money. So she ended up selling off some of her belongings and took a mortgage out on the house, all while all the other houses around the merchant house were demolished or turned into tenements or other structures, apartment buildings. Eventually, Gertrude died alone in her bedroom on the 2nd floor in 1933. She was around 93 years old. So the house was now vacant, and it needed to go somewhere. It needed to be inherited by someone. So she had a niece who it went to. She didn't know what to do with the house, so she sold it to a distant cousin named George Chapman. He turned the house into a museum. So it's a museum to this day. And they named it the Merchant House to honor Seabury Treadwell's profession, So this was in 1936. And even though that for us is a long time ago, for them, the house was still a century old. And it looked like a time capsule. It still does when you go inside. It's fully 1800s in there, mid-1800s. It is now a designated landmark in New York City. And it's not only open for tours, it's open for self-guided tours, which is what we did. But also they do candlelight ghost tours. And I've actually done that with Leela. I'm going to mention it a little bit as we go along. But, prior to Leela and me and Rama going to this house, I had already heard a few stories about this house. So had Leela. And I think we shared it with Rama too. This was from our Candlelight Ghost tour. I wanted to share some of the stories of what people have experienced in the Merchant House. So these are all just stories I've kind of compiled from the internet. There was an incident where a few guys had walked into the house to do a tour, and they were blocked from continuing their tour by an older man who told them to leave. And then when the men saw a portrait of Seabury Treadwell, the old merchant, they were like, oh yeah, that was the guy. And then they were told, no, that's Seabury Treadwell. He was like the patriarch of the home.
I love Christian's reaction. And moved away from us.
I don't know how I feel about that.
There's more. So, and it's not just visitors. It's people who have worked in the museum have experienced phenomena. There was a former museum volunteer who claims to have seen and spoken with a man who she then saw in a photo in the upstairs bedroom, and was able to identify him as also another Treadwell, Samuel Treadwell, another member of the family. Once she was joined in the room by her boyfriend, the man was no longer there, and he was nowhere seen in the house. Other things that have happened in this house, there have been footsteps heard. The piano in the parlor can be heard being played by unseen hands. Sometimes people feel a tap on the shoulder while they're taking a tour. There are things that seem to move around in the house, like teacups or items will move around or become misplaced. A lot of this has been reported by the people who work in the museum or who volunteer in the museum. People have had reactions in Seabury Treadwell's rooms, specifically young women. So apparently he was thought to have been very domineering over his daughters. So if young women are experiencing things, then it makes sense. The staff have reported that their computers often freeze when they type the word Treadwell into it. There's been cold spots, feeling like something's brushing past them. Other things that have been seen are swirling clouds of mist or sightings of apparitions believed to be Gertrude, the last living person in the house, or her father Seabury, her brother Samuel. Where Gertrude died in her room, there's known to be cold spots in there. There's a very well-documented story of the spirit of Gertrude actually making herself known. Many, many years ago, there were children outside on the street playing, and she rushed out of the house and shooed them away and basically told them to like shut up. And this is much, much after she had passed away. She's also been seen, they believe it's Gertrude, she's been seen in a brown dress from the 1800s, discouraging people from entering the house, telling them that the museum is closed that day. So clearly she still does not want visitors. She's still a recluse. That family was not known to be very friendly with other people. So it looks like they might be continuing that to this day. I did a little bit of research on some of the paranormal stuff that's gone on, and there's been paranormal like investigations in that house. They actually still do them to this day. I think maybe we'll do it sometime. We'll join. But there is a paranormal investigator named Dan Sturgis. He's been doing a lot of work in the Merchant House just because of just how active it is. And I wanted to talk about something that he experienced in Eliza's room. Eliza was Gertrude's mother, Seabury's wife. It's thought to be the most haunted room in the house. So Dan Sturgis recalled an investigation where one person who was part of the group looked in Eliza's dresser mirror and asked her a question and asked if she thought that she was pretty. When listening to the recordings later, one of the devices picked up a woman's voice. So I actually wanted to play some of these for you and see what you think. But I want to start with this clip, and let me know if you hear it.
That's a question, sir.
I am not afraid.
Did you hear that?
I heard.
Did you hear that, Christian?
Yeah, it sounded almost like I am something, I think.
I'm not afraid?
Yeah. I am not afraid. I am not afraid. I'll play it again.
That's a question, sir.
I am not afraid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it sounds like a child. There's another one I want to play for you. Here. This is, you can see here, it says, I'll read it out loud for anyone who's listening, but you will hear me ask anybody what their purpose was in the house. And so this is them asking someone what their purpose is in this house. I guess they made contact with something, and they asked it their purpose.
Servant.
Did you hear that? Servant. I think here's the full audio.
Can you tell us what your purpose was? What was your purpose here at the Treadwell's home?
Did you hear it?
Yeah. Servant.
Yeah. Servant. And then here's a final one. And this one, it's... Hold on. It's just someone responding.
Does somebody want these lights turned off?
Jeez.
What was that?
What was that, Dan?
The door.
Did you do that?
Yeah.
So they're freaked out. They're freaked out.
I just jumped because I was
was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was leaning in, concentrating, trying to.
Yeah, there's more. I just wanted to share 3, but if you actually go on that site, you'll be able to listen to more audio that they have found in this from their investigation in this house. But I think this is a good way to kind of go into what our experiences were in that house, Christian, which is why when you say that you really want to go and visit, I'll be curious if after this you will want to. want to visit. And if you do, I'd love to do that with you. I think first what I should do is show you a picture of the house, because I've talked about it a lot, but you haven't actually seen what it looks like. So, and again, I know it's a house, but this is the Merchant house.
So pretty.
That's very pretty. Creepy as heck, though.
Creepy,
And so
right?
this-
With that little creepy tree in front of it.
But you can see it's got the basement level, this first floor, the second, the third, and then an attic as well. So there's a lot going on with this house. So let me go into our experiences in this house. When we went down into this house in the basement level, we started, obviously that's where you normally start. We went all the way back to a back room, and it was near the garden. And this is where we powered up our apps. So we decided to do our own ghost tour. Because we had the whole house to ourselves, and the employees were really nice. They gave us a little booklet that gave us a little bit of history about the house. But we used 3 apps. Correct me if I'm wrong, Leela and Rama, but we used a voice box app. Leela, you were the one using
Spirit
that.
box.
Sorry, a spirit box, which Leela has explained in the past, is it uses frequencies to pick up sounds or voices that often spirits use to communicate with us. I use a different version of a spirit box, which actually used words. So words will populate on your screen. There's an app that does that. And then we use a third app that was able to pick up any motion, any energy that was being made. And then it would use lines to almost trace out a figure if there is one. The first app that we use actually was the spirit box that used words, and almost immediately there were several words that popped out, but some of them were more prominent and they were darker, and they said outside and garden, and we were standing right next to the garden entrance. So we decided to go out into the garden, and it was a cold day, but it was a beautiful, serene, peaceful day. And once again, we basically had a whole run of the house. And so while we were out in the garden, Leela ended up, I don't know, Leela, if you were using this one or if I was, but it was the one where
you can see the stick figures. That was me. Yeah, where it detects an entity. And I saw an entity sitting on the bench.
Yeah, so it traced out basically the stick figure lines. And so we were and Leela and I were fully expecting this to happen, because we'd heard that it's just so prolifically haunted. But there's more that happens. So we don't know who that could have been. It could have been any of the spirits that live there, but maybe it could have been the spirit of someone who must have really loved spending time in that garden, because that's where they were. So in this basement, you not only have this is on the basement, or I guess you can access this from the basement, but in the basement there is a family room and a kitchen. So we went into the kitchen. When Leela and I did a candlelight ghost tour, they played back some audio for us. They had asked them their purpose, similar to what we just heard, and one of the servants spoke, and you can clearly hear them say, "I cook and I clean." There's also been disembodied of voices or noises of horses, because this was very close to where the stable was. So we may not have experienced anything that day, but there has been some phenomena experienced and recorded in this kitchen. So we then moved on to the family room. This would have been a room, since it's in the basement, that the visitors normally didn't go into or spend time in. Visitors were only allowed in the parlors. There were children that would play in that room. So when we were using our equipment, I found the words pop up, and one of them was afraid. And then Leela then pulled out the app that was able to detect an entity in the room, and we saw a figure. The figure was small, like a child, and it had arms that were moving a lot and hands that looked like they were fidgeting. It was almost like a scared child on a chair, kind of fumbling with its hands out of fear. And I remember at that point I just said, don't be afraid, little one. Like, don't be afraid. We're just visitors. We're just passing through. So the next floor up were the parlors that I mentioned where they would have received their guests. And one of them was often converted as a dining room. And the other was just the regular sitting room. So we went into the main parlor and Leela fired up the spirit box. And after trying out a few frequencies, we thought we got lucky with the basement. We may not catch anything, but then all at once, all three of us heard it at the same time. It was the sounds of a piano being played. And we looked up and we realized there was a piano sitting in that parlor. And so we caught it with the spirit box. And so much of that time I just spent staring at the windows. I didn't even think about the piano because I kept thinking about Gertrude. And I was just like imagining her at the window, looking down at the people. I feel like maybe if we had looked hard enough, maybe we would have seen the keys move. I don't know. But we heard it, all three of us. So we were pretty much like, okay, there's a lot happening in this house. So we moved on to the next floor up. And this was Seabury's room and Eliza's room. Eliza's room is the one that is the most haunted. I know generally it just felt there were cold spots, obviously.
Yeah. It felt like occupied.
Yeah, it felt occupied. We felt it. You
Even
could
if it was
feel it in the
empty.
air. There's like a heaviness in the air.
Yeah.
And then we moved on to the third floor, but they weren't accessible to the public. The top floor was a servant's quarters. So by this time, we're like, okay, we've had some pretty good brushes, but the spirits kind of went quiet. So now we were in the servants' quarters where the Irish servants lived. They had a rough life. They left home often when they were really young, like 15, 16 years old. Didn't have the best conditions they lived in, but at least these Irish servants had a warm bed, warm place to stay. There's a couple of beds here, some tables or some chairs that could have sat in. So we thought, well, maybe we'll be able to make some contact with these maids, with these spirits. And we're sitting on the floor. We were tired. We were hungry. There was maybe one metal folding chair.
I think we were the last people left too.
Well, there was barely anyone there in this museum, so I think it was going to close soon. So we tried talking to the spirits of the Irish servants, and we really weren't getting anything. So we had decided to maybe talk to some of the spirits of the Treadwells, and we had heard of a story of one of the Treadwell sons who I think had like a broken engagement or something like that. And we started talking to him. We picked up a voice, and it was a man's voice. It came out of the spirit box. And it was like, the spirit box is often a jumble. You hear music, you hear maybe a word, maybe a noise, but this was an actual sentence. And we heard the words, "She left me." And we didn't hear anything again. And then the spirit box refused to work after that. And I didn't pick anything up, and we picked up no movement, no entity, nothing in that upstairs space. And I think at that point they were just done. The spirits, they had given us all that they could. The museum was
They're like,
going
go
to
home.
close.
They're like, leave now.
So we left that house knowing that we had experienced something that not a lot of people do. Some people go in and they experience nothing, but we haven't been back since. I definitely haven't been back since, but I do walk past that house a lot. Or if I'm nearby and I'm walking home, I make sure to cut across and walk on 4th Street so I can pass the house. And I always stop outside the house and I look through those windows, because what I really hope to see is some movement, or maybe a curtain rustle, or maybe I see a figure stare back out at me in the parlor. Like I mentioned, I imagine Gertrude standing at the window, and I look for her. I look for Gertrude in her old gray dress, or maybe I look one floor above and I look for Seabury Treadwell looking down at the neighborhood changing before his eyes. So I wonder often, when will I be back to the merchant house? How will the spirits behave the next time we come? Will they be more boisterous? Will they remember me? Will they remember us? Or will they be quiet and demure like the servants on the top floor? Will they appear before us like they have with others? Will they shake the walls, bang a door, leave some footsteps, maybe leave us a scent Some people have smelled smoke, or maybe the rustle of cloth, or maybe reach out and touch us. So for me, this only feels like the beginning. What I want to know is, Christian, would you join us next time you come to the city so that we...
100% would. It seems like
Great.
fun, yeah.
I mean, we've always heard that, as I said, this feels like a beginning, and I feel like there's more. I feel like there's more that the spirits want to show us. There's more that they want to do. There's more that they have to say. So while this feels like a beginning, as we've always heard, death is also a beginning. And I think maybe next time we will experience something truly extraordinary.
I want to get like one of those tape recorders. Like play it back and then you hear some distorted audio of someone talking back to you. That'd be quite scary.
You can do it on your iPhone now too. Yeah, but I know what you mean, Christian, in that like it's the old school cassette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
we should do it.
I really don't know how this would work, but from I guess ghost stuff that I've seen, for like a ghost to, I guess the best way is like to show itself, it needs some sort of energy to drain to be able to, sort that out.
Well, we have more sophisticated, like I do want to bring some dowsing rods. Like there are, because like for some reason
There's
with me,
definitely more
dowsing
we can
rods,
bring. Yeah.
dowsing rods always work with me for some reason. For some reason, whenever I'm holding those dowsing rods, the spirits always commune with me. So how would you feel, Christian, with me being the I don't know, what is the word?
Conduit.
Being the conduit and bringing some dowsing rods to the Merchant House Museum.
How I would feel grateful that I'm not the conduit. I'd be happy because I get to see something. I'm very much like,
Yeah.
I guess like I believe it. I believe it because it's you guys telling me this. I know, I believe you, but it's also I want to see it.
You want to experience it.
Yeah.
That's how we are. We want to experience it. We
Yeah,
want to
we're always
it.
searching. We're always searching.
We're always looking. Yeah, I'm someone that if I hear a noise, I'll go and I'll look for the source because I want to see it.
All right. So our ratings, as a reminder, are the least scary, which is some chill. No, I always forget what's wrong with me. It's, I think I'll be able to sleep tonight. Is the least scary. The medium scary is some chills, and the most scary is scared shitless. So, Christian, be our guest.
I'm gonna say some chills because I am gonna be thinking about this.
Man, you are a tough audience. We still can't get used to get scared shitless. You gotta tell us
We'll
what
keep
scares
trying.
you. Yeah, what scares you? Oh, actually, we've never asked you that. What scares you?
What scares me?
Yeah, so we can know for next time.
Man, I don't know. You know what? I actually really did like hearing those audios. Those were pretty scary. Those audios of hearing something. I did like that. That gave me a little spook right there.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna figure out a way to scare you next time.
Yes.
My rating is some chills. And it's because I already lived through this a couple years ago. And you know what? Honestly, when we were there, I wasn't scared. It was winter time. It was Black Friday. It was end of November, New York, and that house is so beautiful on the inside. It's creepy. You definitely feel like you're not alone, even when you're in a room by yourself. You don't feel like you're alone. You feel a presence everywhere you go. Well, thank you so much, Christian, for not being scared shitless, but that's okay because neither me or Ruby have been able to do that. So challenge accepted. And we can't wait for you to share some creepy stories with us in the future.
I can't wait. I'm gonna start writing out like how I'm gonna tell you guys about it.
Yeah, write it up.
You got it.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach us at podcomplaywithus@gmail.com.
We'd love to hear from our listeners. So if you have real life ghost stories or paranormal encounters and you think it'll scare the shit out of us, please send them in. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.